Alrighty, hey everyone. I hope you all had a good 4th of July. I wanted to do a quick little video about practicing since I have to take a little time off to move the studio right now. One thing that I think is very, very important when you're trying to develop as a musician, of course, is practicing. That might seem very obvious, but in a lot of cases, many players don't know how to go about practicing effectively. So I just wanted to go over a few tips that I have to help you do that. To have an effective practice session, the first thing you want to do is have some type of basic goal. You should pick out something you want to practice. It could be a song, it could be a scale, it could be an exercise, whatever it is. The main thing is to have a basic goal. And it doesn't hurt to have a short-term goal, like, hey, I want to learn this song, to a long-term goal, hey, I want to learn this album, whatever the case might be. Step number 2 is when you do start practicing, you want to do it consistently. Let me give you an example. If you practice 1 day a week for 1 hour, you will get 1 hour of practice in that week. But I always compare this to like eating 1 day a week. So let's say instead of eating all the food you need in little portions across the whole week, you eat all that same amount of food in one sitting. That's not really good for you. That's bad. And it's the same thing with practicing. If you sit down every single day and consume a little bit of your practicing, you are gonna, you're gonna make more progress. So try to come up with a basic practice schedule that you can stick to. Even something as simple as 10 minutes a day can work. The example that I'm going to play a little bit later, I did that exact thing, and I'll get to that in a few minutes. But it's one of those things. Having a consistent, basic practice schedule that you keep is one of the most important things. So that's step 1. One tip that I have is anything that you're working on, if you feel like you're relying on the music a lot, try to step away from the music and see if you can memorize it. If you're playing, rock and roll kind of songs, it doesn't hurt to just sit and memorize whatever piece you're working on. In a lot of cases, let's say you're playing Beatles or an Ozzy song or an AC/DC song, just spend a few minutes to memorize the parts. Once again, later on in the video, I'm going to show you the piece that I worked on to give you these examples, and that was the first thing that I did was I memorized it before I went about trying to perfect it. If you have it in your mind and in your ear, you are more likely to achieve the goal of mastering that one piece, versus trying to read it and not being sure what the notes are, that kind of thing. The next thing is to start slow. Always work very slowly to build your control of whatever it is that you're working on, to build your stamina, and to make sure you're practicing it correctly. If you practice things incorrectly, your results are not going to be as great as if you practice them correctly, started slow, and worked your way up. The next step, I think with anything that you do, is to make sure to practice with a recording. Now, one thing that I see a lot these days is everyone seems to have a smartphone except for me, which is fine. You can, it's no problem. But I think one of the downsides is that with everyone having the smartphone, we seem to play music on those little tiny speakers an awful lot, and it's really tough to hear what's going on. There's basically no bass frequencies. It's all high frequencies, and it's really, really tough to actually understand how the whole musical component works. At the very least, try to get yourself a Bluetooth speaker and always have it hooked up when you're practicing. Make sure you listen to whatever it is you're doing on a recording while you practice it. That's how you're going to get it in your ear. A lot of people tell me, oh, I can't memorize things and it's really difficult. And I say, first, make sure you're listening to the music, because that is going to help. Anytime you can sing along with a song, that is part of the memorization component. One thing that I hear quite a bit as far as practicing goes, or why we're not practicing, any student or player for that matter, is time. In general, we can always find the time. And again, that was one thing that I did with the riffs that I'm working on, making that time every single day to practice and put together the components of what I am working on. And it's the same thing. One thing I tell people, if you've memorized the piece that you're working on, even a little tiny piece of it, go and sit in front of the TV and practice. I heard Steve Martin, the famous comedian, who's also a great banjo player, he's like, he was in an interview, and the interview was like, "Wow, you play banjo really fast." And he says, "Well, you just sit in front of the TV and do it over and over a million times." And that can make a huge difference. It's a very simple thing, but sometimes repetition can be very boring. And so this is a way to get outside of that repetition and the boredom of that by just sitting in front of the TV. Take an idea that is really challenging and work on it so that your fingers memorize it. One of the other things is just patience. Have patience. Work on things slowly. Understand what your hands and your ears and your mind are working on, and slowly it will be able to work up there. I tell people all the time, I am a very slow learner. It took me a long time to develop any skills on the guitar. And the main thing is you just want to have a great time in the process. If you don't enjoy the process, then it's not worth it. So have fun, be patient, and enjoy the process. And right now, where a lot of things are still closed and summer camps are closed, use this time to really get your skills under your fingers. You have the time to do this every single day, even if it's only for 15 minutes, but I guarantee you, you could find 20, 30 minutes. Split up your practicing, do 15 minutes in the morning, 15 minutes at night, and I guarantee you, you will make huge, huge strides in your playing. So use this time while you can. And one final note is, don't take too many things at once. Take little tiny pieces, build it up, and that will help you as well. Take small chunks, digest them, get them under your fingers, get them in your ear, and it's going to make a difference. All right, so the piece that I worked on, I actually put out a little poll on Facebook asking people to give me ideas for things to work on. And what ended up happening was a couple people recommended this Dream Theater song that I had played a million years ago, like legitimately like 20 years ago. And I hadn't touched it since. And I knew it would be something that would be challenging for me. I only remembered probably, I'm going to guess and say 10% of the notes in the piece. And I hadn't practiced anything this technically demanding in a long time. So I was like, you know what? I think I'm going to work on this and see if I can do it. So about a week ago, I said, okay, I'm going to work on this. First thing that I did was I sat down and I transcribed the entire solo section. And by the way, it's a song, Dream Theater Erotomania. It's from the Awake album from, I think, 1995. And so I said, okay, I'm gonna work on this. And the first thing I did was I rewrote the entire solo. I listened to it, getting all the notes and everything. The second thing that I did was I sat down each night and I started to memorize it. And I was working with a metronome to help me speed it up. And I took it in little tiny chunks. And then eventually I was able to, it's pretty difficult. I don't even think I'm 100% there yet, maybe about 90%. But I just took it in little tiny chunks. So here, let me just play it for you, just so you can hear it. So that's what the basic solo sounds like. And what I did was I just took it chunk by chunk, little tiny piece at a time, one phrase at a time, memorized each one, and then I worked on the speed. And then I would add little bits and pieces into it. And then gradually work it up. Again, it's still a work in progress, but it's something that I had a goal. Hey, I want to try to work out my basic practice skills and show my students how to put something together. So this took me about a week working on it, one chunk at a time. And so here it is. It's the end guitar solo in Erotomania by Dream Theater. Feel free to check out some videos. There's a million of them out there. But yeah, so this is again consistent practice, playing it every day, working on your technique, practicing it slow, memorization, that kind of thing. It's all kind of wrapped up in one example. All right, so that's about it. If you have any questions, please let me know. You can either put it in the comments or send me an email. But, keep practicing and, let me know if you want me to do any more videos like this. So thanks. We'll see you soon. Bye.